Hey everyone, what's going on? So I had originally planned to make this video a few days ago, and I'm glad that I waited, but what I was going to talk about was how these first people to get the coronavirus in the UK, how they are synced up to the Francis Bacon gematria ciphers that I have talked about for a really long time, and I've talked about how they're absolutely important to the coronavirus narrative that's going on among pretty much every other event that has been going on for the past year or two. And I know that this is important because in the UK they said that the second person to get the vaccine, or the first man, is named William Shakespeare. And if you just do a search and type in Francis Bacon and William Shakespeare, you're going to find that for years there has been a conspiracy theory that says that Francis Bacon is actually William Shakespeare, or Francis Bacon actually wrote all of William Shakespeare's work, or. So there's this connection to William Shakespeare and Francis Bacon, and now the second person to get the coronavirus vaccine just so happens to be named William Shakespeare. But the reason that I'm glad I waited is because this video is actually going to be completely different than this, because in this video I'm going to prove to you that everything in this world happens for a reason. And in my gematria research, I actually made an error because lately I have been talking about COVID-19, and I've been writing it out like this: COVID-19. And that just so happens to equal 264 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. And look at this. The first lady to get it, her name was Margaret Keenan. That equals 264. Also, the word vaccine equals 264. And COVID-19 equals 264. But what I didn't realize until just today, and it's even funnier yet because I have been talking about this day for weeks, because it's 38 days after my 38th birthday. And I've been having a bunch of synchronicity with Katie Holmes and Dawson's Creek. And, just after that, then Tom Cruise was in the news about having this rant about social distancing. And Tom Cruise used to be married to Katie Holmes. And I don't know how many countless things I've talked about before they happened. Talked about this penguin story at Soldier Field and how it was synced up to the movie Matilda, and also some other Roald Dahl things. And then Roald Dahl's family was in the news, talking about his apologizing for his racist comments from 30 years ago. Like, when Tiny Lister died, I talked about how it was synced up to Sharon and Ozzy Osbourne. And then Sharon Osbourne was in the news talking about how she had got coronavirus, and a number of other things, a Native American theme, and then the Cleveland Indians announced their name change, and, talked about how it's synced up to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and also the Buffalo Bills are the Washington Redskins, and then the Washington Redskins are the first team to beat the Buffalo Bill, or the Washington Redskins are the first team to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, and keeping them on 11 wins, and then the next game, the Buffalo Bills beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, keeping them on 11 wins by winning by 11 points, and so on. There's a whole lot more, but just countless things I have talked about that seem unrelated, but they are related. And I'm going to make a whole separate video on a lot of this, but I'm just making the point that literally everything in the world is connected, everything happens for a reason, and even if you make an error such as this, it all is important. It was supposed to happen. It's actually supposed to be COVID with all capital letters, right? And this is important because the Francis Bacon ciphers actually are important to capital letters, right? Capital letter, like the letter A in Francis Bacon, that has a value of 27 when it's capital, and then capital B would be 28, and so on, right? But let me finish what I blogged about in this post, and then I'll come back and explain why me spelling this wrong without capital letters is actually important. And, it is pretty interesting how it does sync up, right? 264, just like vaccine, just like this lady's name, even with just the capital C. But look at William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, his name equals 187, and the non-Francis Bacon ciphers, And all year we've been talking about how the Jesuits, who are called the Society of Jesus, are important to coronavirus and Event 201, and how the current Pope, Pope Francis, stays in room 201 called the Domus Sanctae Martae, that equals 201, and his birth name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, equals 201, and the Jesuits were founded by Ignatius of Loyola, that equals 201, and a whole lot of stuff, right? And, Society of Jesus also equals 187. And it also equals 239 in the Francis Bacon ciphers, just like how Illuminati equals 239. Johann Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, grew up going to a Jesuit school and so on. Most likely, he was at least Jesuit trained and so on, right? He's not necessarily a Jesuit according to the history books, but he has a major tie to the Society of Jesus. So Illuminati 239. Notice William Shakespeare equals 239. Also, think about the Society of Jesus that was actually established in France, in Paris, France. It was established in Paris, France even. Paris, France equals 239. This is why Pope Francis came to the United States in 2015 in the 239th year of the United States. And then he went to the White House on the date 23/9. And, of course, the word Pope equals 52. The 52nd prime number is 239. The word White House equals 52. The word President equals 52. Also, gematria equals 52. Kabbalah equals 52. And in the Francis Bacon ciphers, it uses 52 letters, right? Lowercase a through z is 1 through 26, and then uppercase A is 27 all the way up to 52, which is a capital Z, right? So 52 letters. Think about 52, cards in a playing card deck, and how it's related to the royal family and a whole lot more, But, 52 days after Pope Francis, I think after he arrived in America on the anniversary of the French Republic, we got the attack in Paris, France on Friday the 13th as well. And that just so happened to be by ISIS, and ISIS also equals 52 in gematria. So there's this major narrative with all of this going on. But William Shakespeare, if you look him up, he died at the age of 52. So just another, interesting thing. The Francis Bacon ciphers, his name equals 239, and he dies at the age of 52, which is the 52nd prime is 239. The Pfizer vaccine that they got is also called, however you say this, Tazinameran, or whatever. That also equals 187, just like William Shakespeare, Society of Jesus, and so on. And they made it a point, too, that Margaret Keenan, the first lady to get the coronavirus, is from Coventry. And Coventry is right next to where William Shakespeare grew up in Warwickshire, England. And, look at Coventry in the Francis Bacon ciphers. Coventry equals 187, also equals 243. And then the non-Francis Bacon ciphers, it equals 122 and 94. And this is interesting because Francis Bacon's birthday is January 22nd, 122. Pope Francis equals 122 in gematria. Francis Bacon and William Shakespeare, their birthdays were 94 days apart. Also, if you go from the day they got this vaccine to the day that Francis Bacon supposedly died, the anniversary of it, it's 122 days. And if you go the other way, from the day that he died, it's 243 days. Look at this. Coventry equals 122, 243. So I knew Coventry was important, right? And 5-2 is also the 122nd day of the year. Zach also pointed out that on his blog that the word Coventry actually is an idiom that means to deliberately ostracize someone, or, it's done by not talking to them, avoiding their company, and so on. And really think about that in regards to coronavirus, right? Think about it, all these people are going to get the vaccine and then they're still going to be scared to, talk to other people and deliberately ostracize people, right? It's pretty interesting to think about. Coventry. Perfect town for the lady to be born to get the first coronavirus vaccine. So anyway, today as I was sitting here, I was writing up some blog posts, and I haven't wrote very many blog posts recently because I haven't really felt that good, honestly, for the whole week. My stomach, it's finally better, or getting better, but I mean, I threw up for the first time in like 5 years on Sunday, and I threw up for most of the day, and I thought it was from drinking, but I didn't really drink that much, and I don't know, it just didn't make any sense, but, whatever. Moral of the story is, I was trying to write a bunch of blog posts today, and I just kind of stumbled upon it. I saw the word COVID, and I was like, COVID is actually all capital letters when you write it out. I thought, man, I can't believe I've messed that up. And I went and I looked, and, it doesn't, when you do it this way, it doesn't equal the same for Maggie Keenan anymore, obviously, right? But it's interesting, it equals 212. And if you just write COVID with all capital letters in the Francis Bacon ciphers, it equals 212. And it's funny because a long time ago I did this on another thing with NASCAR. I always did NASCAR like this, and I noticed that NASCAR equals 111, just like Dale Earnhardt Jr., and NASCAR also equaled 82, and the owner, or the guy who runs NASCAR right now, was named Bill France, and his name equals 82, and I can't remember it all. He died like 1 month and 11 days or something like that after his birthday, or maybe 111. But it was like his name equaled 82, it was synced up to NASCAR this way, right? NASCAR with just a capital N. And that's the only other time I can really remember that I've even noticed this, and that's the only time I've even documented about it. But it changes, when you put NASCAR like this, it's completely different. But notice NASCAR also equals 212, right? Just like if you read out COVID equals 212, and then COVID-19 also equals 212, and it never changed the narrative either. Like, I followed this whole narrative with how it all synced up, and I was talking about how it was synced up to France, and I thought that there was going to be a racer that was going to die on August 31st, which was the day that Dale Earnhardt was going to make a comeback in racing, and he was going to race in the Xfinity race, and talked about the death of his mother, and how it was all synced up to the number 44, and they announced he was going to be racing 4 months and 4 days later in the Hellmann's mayonnaise car, and Hellmann's equal 44, and Dale Earnhardt was 44 years old, and his mother's name was Brenda, that equals 44, and Jackson equals 44, and I think Xfinity equals 44. All kinds of stuff. It is all synced up to August 31st, and I thought a racer was going to die in connection to France, right? Bill France. Dale Earnhardt Jr. just so happened to be in a plane crash on August 15th, right before this. And August 15th is the day that Napoleon was born in history. The 227th day of the year. This was during the 227th anniversary of the French Republic. French Republic equals 227. French Revolution equals 227. Napoleon was born on the 227th day of the year. And so on. So I knew there was something important to this day still with France and so on. And on that day, the French racer Antoine Hubert just so happened to die. And it was synced up to France. It was 22 days before the anniversary of the French Republic, 9/22, and the guy who crashed into him 22 days after his birthday, and a whole bunch of other things, on the 22nd anniversary of Princess Diana dying in France. So, and Dale Earnhardt's plane crash was in Elizabethton, can't remember what state, Elizabethton, like Tennessee, I believe, but Elizabethton, right? Think about Queen Elizabeth, and so on, right? So I'm just pointing this out. It all still synced up to what I was talking about. Even though I did the gematria wrong, the gematria still synced up to what I was talking about. And I went back and I looked up the post. I was trying to figure out, like, what day that I made this post about discovering I was doing NASCAR wrong. And it was from September 19th of 2019. And would you believe in this post, I actually talk about the word Coventry, and I even highlight it. Like, I even make it all capital letters because it's important, right? And what I talked about was how this guy named Mike Stefanik, or however you say his name, he died on September 15th in a plane crash. And he was actually from this town or whatever. He was from Coventry, Rhode Island, or the plane left from Coventry, Rhode Island, and that's the area that this guy was from, was Coventry, Rhode Island. Or maybe, I don't know. All I know is it was connected to Coventry, Rhode Island. The plane left from Coventry, from Recon Airport in Coventry, Rhode Island, right? But what are the odds? This is the Coventry, right? And then this lady gets the vaccine in Coventry. And if you type in Coventry on my blog, I've only blogged about it 3 times. The blog post where I talked about the lady getting coronavirus, this blog post, and then earlier this summer, I talked about this TV show called The Order that I watched, and how the lead guy of The Order, his name was Edward Coventry. It's the only other times I've talked about this, or even mentioned this word on my blog, so, what are the odds? And this guy's name equals 111, just like how NASCAR equaled the 111 in them, or, me doing it the wrong way. This guy's full name, too, Michael Paul Stefanik. Look at it as in Francis Bacon. Michael Paul. It equals 264, right? Just like how COVID-19 was messed up. COVID-19, when I did it the wrong way, it equals 264. And his name equaling 111, let's put it up here again, sorry, but it equals 111, and in regards to just how it all syncs up to the royal family, Queen Elizabeth II equals 264, right? And she was born on the 111th day of the year. If she dies, her son will be King Charles III, that equals 264. Think about how Antoine Hubert died on 8/31, which is Princess Diana, the day Princess Diana died, which was, the lady who Prince Charles got divorced from. There's a whole lot going on with how it all syncs up. What's Mike Stefanik? I want to look at that really quick. And his name equals 201, which is interesting, that big number with the Jesuits this year. And also 244 in the Francis Bacon ciphers. And remember, this year was the anniversary of Princess Diana dying in France. That just happened to be the 244th day of the year in the 244th year of the United States. And once again, if you read out King Charles III, notice how it also equals 244. So, and what's even more interesting is that this blog post that I posted it on 9/19, and since 2014, I have been saying that I feel like this day is synced up to Queen Elizabeth forever. It's like just such a super important day, and so on. And I thought 9/19/19 was the day that she might die, because it's 9/19/19, right? Think about all the 19s, and I think the word queen equals 19? The word queen equals 19. The word king equals 67, which is the 19th prime number too. So I thought there was like a pretty good chance there was something going on with that date. And forever, I don't know what it is, but it always syncs up. It's always important to Queen Elizabeth. And it's just interesting. I have this post on that day. This day was also Pope Francis's 6th year, 6th month, and 6th day of being the Pope, right? 666. Think about Pope Francis. So, just interesting. I would mess that up. It's synced up to that. Look at this too. Sandra Lindsay, the lady who got the first coronavirus vaccine in the United States, Sandra Lindsay. Her name equals 262, just like how NASCAR equals 262 in the real way. But look at her name again, Sandra Lindsay. It equals 418, just like if you read out COVID the right way. COVID-19, 418. So, and it also equals 67, something that I'm going to talk about with a bunch of synchronicity that's really important to Sharon Osbourne and Tiny Lister and all kinds of stuff here. But 67, and I found this interesting because Dale Earnhardt Jr. equals 67, and Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s birthday just so happens to be 10/10, and in Jewish gematria, if you read out COVID-19, It equals 10, 10, right? I didn't put it in here, but let's find it really quick. Jewish. What? Oh, I had extra E in there. COVID-19, 10, 10. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s birthday. And it's really funny because for days I was trying to figure out why Sandra Lindsay didn't sync up like the Margaret Keenan lady. And then, in fact, Margaret Keenan actually doesn't sync up to COVID-19, just the word vaccine. And then Sandra Lindsay actually syncs up to COVID-19. So her name also equals 210, and they kept calling her ICU nurse. So who knows? I found that interesting. Her name equaled 210, and ICU nurse equals 210 in the Francis Bacon. ICU nurse also equals 208 in the Francis Bacon stuff, and look at Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon equals 208 in Frank Baconus, and Frank Baconus equals 208 in Frank Baconus too. So a few other things that really stick out to me are when I looked up Dale Earnhardt, or Dale Earnhardt Jr., it says that he's a huge fan of the Washington Redskins, or the Washington football team, right? Singing up with this Native American theme that I've been following, right? The Washington football team. And there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but up here in this post, I also talked about how I said it reminds me of Covenant, right? That I just documented about. And if you look at my post where I talked about the Coven and Covenant, I talked about how I was writing up my book and I kept having the synchronicity with Ram. Like, the TV said Ramsey or something like that, right as I was writing the word Ram and so on. And just earlier today, I wrote about the Rams, if I could find it here. I talked about the death of this Baltimore Ravens player, Lorenzo Taliaferro, and I go on to talk all about the Rams because this guy's name equals 96, just like how Baltimore Ravens equal 96, and before the Rams were in Super Bowl 53, I talked about how the Ravens were created because of the Cleveland Browns owner Art Modell, and Art Modell, he died on the date of 9/6, just before the Ravens last won the Super Bowl, and it was Super Bowl 47, but he died in 2012, just before that, on the date of 9/6. Baltimore Ravens equal 96, Lorenzo Taliaferro equals 96, their owner died on 9/6, and a whole lot more, That Super Bowl was all about 34, and this guy wore the number 34, like, it was on the 34th day of the year, and the Ravens won with 34 points, and there was a blackout that delayed the game for 34 minutes, and Joe Flacco equals 34, and he was the MVP. His name also equals 47, it was Super Bowl 47. Then on the date 3-4, they gave Joe Flacco a huge contract, a record-breaking at the time contract, and a whole lot more. But the Rams were also really important to the number 34 in Super Bowl 53. And Art Modell equaled 53, and it was synced up to Sean McVay, the coach of the Rams, and so on. But the Rams used to be from Cleveland. The Baltimore Ravens were founded in the year 96 because of Art Modell wanting to leave Cleveland, right? So they have this ties to the Cleveland Browns. They just played the Cleveland Browns, and then this guy dies, and it's all synced up to the Native American theme. But the whole point is, I'm just saying, I talked about the Rams a lot in this post, and so I just think it's funny that in this old blog post where I mentioned Coven, I also talked about the Rams. So definitely got to keep my eye on the Rams, see what's going on with that and how it syncs up. But like I said, hopefully I'll make some other videos. There's a whole lot of synchronicity things going on, but I just want to show you that even though I'd made an error, it's still like showing me all these things. It's still related, almost like I was supposed to make this error to discover this new thing at a later date. You know what I'm saying? That's how this knowledge works. It truly is mysticism. And even when, things still happen, even if you're doing it wrong, and then, you come to find out that you were doing it wrong for a reason, and you didn't even realize that you were doing it wrong. But I even went and looked up the town of Coventry, Rhode Island here, right, where this plane was, and it says notable people, and it doesn't even hardly have that many people, but Notice how it has Desiree Washington. Desiree Washington just so happens to be the lady who Mike Tyson was found guilty of raping. And if you go back and just watch my last few videos and my last few blog posts and whatever, I've talked a whole lot about Mike Tyson and how Mike Tyson was important. I also talked about 50 Cent, and 50 Cent was important to, in the song Many Men. I had synchronicity with the song Many Men, and the Tiny Lister is also in the Many Men video, and 50 Cent was actually shot 9 times with a 9mm by a guy named, can't remember the guy's name, but it's the same guy who was Tupac's bodyguard, and Tupac got shot at the Mike Tyson fight, and so on, right? So it's like, what are the odds? Desiree Washington, the lady who Mike Tyson supposedly raped, is from this town too, Coventry, Rhode Island. And he supposedly even raped her in an Indianapolis hotel, right? Indianapolis, Indiana, is that literally comes from land of the Indian, right? This whole big narrative with Indian. Mike Pence just got his fake coronavirus vaccine, right? And Mike Pence is also from the land of the Indian. Mike Pence born on 6/7, which again, I will explain in a different video, but it's absolutely important. But look at Desiree Washington in gematria. Desiree Washington, 264, right? Think about too, in regards to Indianapolis, the Indians, they changed their name, right? Or they announced they're going to change their name. Let me find it here. They announced they're going to change their name, and then the next day, the Cleveland Browns played the Baltimore Ravens, who have the ties. They were created basically out of the Cleveland Browns, right? Cleveland. If you look up the basketball game that day, let me find it here. If you look up the basketball game, the same day that the Cleveland Browns played the Baltimore Ravens, well, whatever. The Cleveland Cavaliers played Indianapolis. I don't know where I put it, but we'll type it in really quick. Pacers. I don't know where in the world to put it. I thought I had a picture of the screen, but the Cleveland Cavaliers, they beat there it is right here, jeez. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Indiana Pacers with 116 points. And if you go back to my Native American theme that I was talking about from years ago, I talked about how it's connected to the town I live in. That equals 116, and the Cleveland Indians were in their 116th season, you know, and a whole bunch of other things. So, and notice the lead scorer in the game was this Dante Exum, and his birthday is 7/13, which is the day that the Washington Redskins announced they were going to change their name. So, I know that it's important. Indianapolis, land of the Indian. But my kids are up here, so I'm just going to end the video here. Hopefully I'll make some other ones later tonight. Have a good one. Peace.